Eva had been single for nearly a year when she decided to try online dating. She was hesitant at first. Something about finding love through a screen felt unnatural. But loneliness has a way of making you try things you'd once sworn off. So she downloaded a popular dating app, filled out her profile, and swiped through the endless stream of faces. It didn't take long before she matched with Lucas. His profile picture caught her attention immediately. Dark, wavy hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that could melt ice. He was handsome, too handsome maybe, but his messages were sweet and thoughtful. Eva was smitten. Their first date was magical. Lucas was charming, funny, and attentive. They had dinner at a trendy restaurant, then walked along the city's riverside, talking for hours. She felt an instant connection. As the weeks passed, they grew closer, going on hikes, watching movies, and sharing late-night phone calls that lasted until the early morning hours. Lucas was perfect, or so she thought. Months passed, and they were practically inseparable. He met her friends, charmed her family, and always seemed to say the right things at the right time. Eva was convinced he was the one. But then, subtle changes began. It started with little comments, masked as jokes. "I don't like you going out without me," or "you spend too much time with your friends." At first, she brushed it off as him being protective, but soon, Lucas became more controlling. He checked her phone when she wasn't looking, questioned her every move, and grew possessive in ways that unnerved her. One night, after a seemingly normal dinner at his place, everything changed. Eva was sitting on the couch, her phone buzzing on the table. Lucas picked it up before she could. His face darkened when he saw a text from one of her friends. Without a word, he locked the door and slipped the key into his pocket. "Lucas, what are you doing?" she asked, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. He smiled, a chilling, unfamiliar smile. "I don't want you to leave, Eva. Not ever." She tried to stand, but he was quicker, grabbing her wrist with a force she hadn't known he was capable of. Fear rushed through her as the man she once thought she knew transformed into a stranger before her eyes. For weeks, Lucas held her captive in his apartment. He monitored every call, every text, and kept her from going outside. She was isolated, terrified, and desperate to escape. He was always watching, always one step ahead. It wasn't until she heard the news one morning, an arrest of a suspected serial killer in the area, that she realized just how much danger she was in. A chill ran down her spine as she saw his face on the TV, alongside the grim details of his crimes. Women had gone missing, all with the same profile: young, single, trusting. Eva had been next. With growing horror, she pieced together the truth. Lucas wasn't just her overbearing boyfriend. He was the killer everyone had been talking about for months, and she was trapped in his web, helpless. But one night, during a moment of carelessness on Lucas's part, she found her chance. He had fallen asleep. The door unlocked for the first time in weeks. Heart racing, Eva quietly slipped out, running for her life and not looking back. She never went back to the dating app again. In the weeks that followed, Lucas was arrested, his twisted crimes uncovered for all to see. Eva tried to move on, but the scars remained, both physical and emotional. She had survived, but the nightmare of her perfect match would haunt her forever. After Eva escaped and Lucas was arrested, she thought the nightmare was finally over. For weeks, she avoided leaving her apartment unless it was absolutely necessary. Even then, her every step was filled with paranoia. She would glance over her shoulder, convinced someone was watching her. Crowded spaces made her uneasy, and even the smallest sound in the night jolted her awake, drenched in sweat. Therapy helped, but nothing could truly erase the fear lodged deep inside her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lucas. His chilling smile, the way his voice shifted when he told her she couldn't leave. And though she tried to suppress it, the thought that haunted her most was how easily she had trusted him. How could she not see the monster lurking behind those eyes? Months passed, and life slowly began to return to something resembling normalcy. She started to reconnect with her friends, return to work, and even found herself laughing at times. But the trauma never truly left. Then, one evening, while Ava was sitting at home scrolling through her emails, a notification popped up on her phone. She froze. It was a message from the dating app, the same one where she had met Lucas. "Hey Eva, it's been a while. Ready to find your next match?" She stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The app had been deleted months ago. She hadn't even thought to log back in. But the message was there, a cruel reminder of how it had all started. Her thumb hovered over the notification, trembling. With a deep breath, she dismissed it. But the next morning, she woke up to something far worse. On her doorstep lay a single white envelope. No stamp, no address. Just her name, handwritten in neat, familiar script. Her blood ran cold. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Eva opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph. It was of her, taken just days ago, walking out of her apartment. The image was taken from a distance, but she could clearly make out her face, her clothes, her surroundings. The second she saw it, she knew the photograph was not just meant to scare her. It was a warning. There was something else inside the envelope. A small slip of paper, folded in half. She unfolded it slowly, revealing a single word. "Miss me?" Her breath hitched. Lucas was in prison, wasn't he? She hadn't followed the trial after the initial arrest. She assumed everything had gone as expected, that he would be locked away for the rest of his life. But doubt seeped in. Could someone have taken his place? Was there a copycat? Or worse, could Lucas still be out there? Frantic, Eva searched for information about Lucas online. She found what she expected. He had been convicted of multiple murders and was awaiting sentencing. He should have been in maximum security. But as she dug deeper, she discovered something chilling. There had been reports of a prison break the previous week. The authorities had kept it quiet to avoid public panic, but several inmates had escaped. Lucas was among them. Her hands went numb as she stared at the article. It felt like the room was closing in on her. He had escaped. He was out there somewhere, and he had found her. Eva spent the next few days barricading herself in her apartment. She reported the photograph to the police, but with Lucas on the run, their resources were stretched thin. They promised to patrol the area, but there was only so much they could do. Every creak in the apartment, every shadow outside her window, made her heart race. She barely slept, too terrified that Lucas would come back for her. And then one night, the terror became real. It was late, around midnight, when she heard a soft knock on her door. Eva froze, her breath shallow. It wasn't the front door, but the sliding door that led to her small balcony. No one should be out there, especially not on the 5th floor of her building. She reached for her phone, but it slipped from her shaking hands. The knock came again, this time more insistent. Eva crept toward the sliding door, her heart hammering in her chest. She barely dared to breathe as she peeked through the curtains. There he was. Lucas stood on her balcony, his face pressed against the glass, smiling. "How did you—" She choked on her words, backing away from the door. "Miss me?" His voice was muffled through the glass, but she could hear him clearly. He looked thinner, his eyes wilder than before, but it was undeniably him. He raised a hand, tapping the glass softly with his knuckles. "I told you, Eva. You can't leave." Eva bolted toward her front door. But before she could reach it, the power went out. The apartment plunged into darkness. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so violently she could barely dial 911. As she pressed the call button, she heard the sound of the sliding door sliding open behind her. A voice, calm, chilling, echoed through the darkness. "I always know where you are." Eva ran, her breath ragged, praying the police would arrive in time. But deep down, she knew that Lucas wouldn't stop until he had her, until the nightmare finally ended.